Hey guys, Alley Cat here. So I've been spending pretty much all weekend in bed watching Netflix because my coworkers were like, get it, it's great, it's wonderful, it's totally worth it. I've been reading this series called The Broken Empire, and it's a fantasy series. It's a trilogy with a bunch of like little novellas. One of the things that I really like about this series is that Mark Lawrence writes the protagonist as an anti-hero instead of a hero, and Marie Lu did this with The Young Elites as well, and I really liked that because, let's face it, heroes are just boring and non-relatable. I mean, look at Harry Potter for instance. It's almost predictable the way that he's going to act, the way that his friends are going to act, whereas with the anti-heroes of stories, they're more human, I guess you could say, and so they act in very human ways, which is oftentimes not predictable. And so you get a lot of moments where it's like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. And it's really, really great to actually be engaged in a book like that. When you first open the book, you find yourself at the very end of a raid. And then from there, you know, the story kind of just does jump cuts where, you know, you've got the main story plot where the young prince is growing up. And then in between you have, this is what happened at this point 5 years ago, this is what happened at this point 4 years ago, and so on and so forth. And it's really cool to kind of read the story like that, and you can kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together, and as a result of that, as you're reading, you start to pick up context clues as to the location and what's going on, like as a background in the history before the whole story starts. For me, it wasn't until about halfway through the first book that I figured out kind of what was going on and what had taken place. Because, you know, it's a fantasy series, so it's kind of set in medieval type of like a medieval situation, but at the same time, there's just things that seem off, like it's almost like steampunky at a point, and it's just kind of like, well, wait, what's going on? So as you're reading the story, you kind of pick up the context clues and you're like, oh, okay, this is what this is. Oh, this is what that is. There is, of course, a lot of bloodshed, a lot of gore. There's zombies, and normally I don't do zombies. Like, I went to go see Shaun of the Dead in theaters with my brother, and for like 2 or 3 years afterwards, I was still having nightmares about the pub scene. Like, I really have a legit fear of zombies, and I don't know why, but, you know, it's there. So I have a really hard time with, like, Dead Rising type of stuff and like, hey, surprise, Lichkin and what have you, but it's actually really well done here. So it's not quite as like, it's creepy, but it's not like, you know, very descriptive where like flesh is falling off faces and you've got like brains being eaten and guts being ripped out. So at least you're spared that. But at the same time, Mark Lawrence does get really descriptive with some of the stuff that happens to the general population in times of war, and it's really not pleasant. So, you know, just a heads up if you do actually read the book, that it does get pretty gory and pretty violent. And by book, I mean the series. The books themselves are generally a pretty quick read. I think I read the first book in about a day, and then the second book maybe like a day and a half, and this last book is on my Kindle about 1,000 pages, and I'm about halfway through, and I haven't read in the past couple days because Netflix. But it's a really good read. It's a really fast read if you're looking to kind of catch up like towards the end of the year on your Goodreads like book challenge or whatever, if you guys do that. I figured with Game of Thrones and like Mockingjay and The Giver and all of these fantasy books kind of getting their own TV shows and movies, people would maybe be interested in learning about other fantasy books. So The Broken Empire is a very good series. Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea series is pretty good. There's a couple of other series that I started, but because they're all self-published, it's kind of, the editing is just really annoying. So although they're really good books and they have really great plots, I'm not going to recommend them just because the editing is just lacking, and it trips a lot of people up. So you'll see reviews about them and a lot of people talk about the grammar, the spelling, everything else, and it just trips them up, and it doesn't really allow readers to get into the stories, so I won't even bother recommending those. So what about you guys? What kinds of books are you reading? Let me know below in the comments. If you liked this video, you want to see more, you can click like, you can click subscribe, you can do whatever you want to do, and I will see you guys next week. Bye! So it's really nice then to read a fantasy story that's really put well together? What does that even mean?